Donald Trump has a bunch of legal problems. He's had legal bills to pay for them and his criminal cases, about $50 million. And that keeps people from, A, contributing to you. Sometimes they're contributing to opponents, in this case, Nikki Haley. And you add to the fact that Joe Biden is outraising Donald Trump. He's underspending Donald Trump. And President Biden has more money in his campaign bank than Donald Trump does.
Hey everybody, this is Sonny Bunch of the Bulwark. I am very excited to be talking to Marc Caputo today about his article on Donald Trump learning to do the most basic thing that any politician has to do. It's very funny, Marc. I was reading your newsletter, your article today, and I was just like, wait, I thought all politicians spent all of their time fundraising. Is that not always been the case with Donald Trump?
Yeah, the thing about Donald Trump that's been the most consistent about him is he's been a totally abnormal candidate, and he's had an abnormal campaign, except for now in 2020. He's got a normal campaign. He's still an abnormal candidate, but there's some normalization going on, and one of those things is fundraising. Like, yeah, most politicians know in order for me to run for office, I need to raise money. In order to raise money, I got to make donor calls. Trump used to just refuse to do them. You have to have fundraisers. Trump really didn't have a lot. But that's changing now. He's really hitting the phones. He's got a professional fundraising staff who are setting things up properly, making sure that when he makes the call, he gets a campaign payout, so to speak, legal, of course. And then they're following up to make sure that the check figuratively is in the mail and that it gets cashed.
Legal. Well, there's always some question there because there were stories. I remember the stories, and you mentioned this in your post today about people complaining about being overcharged, like they were accidentally signing up for. I'm not just donating $10 now. I'm donating $10 every 6 days or something through the end of the campaign.
Right. CNBC just reported that that's still going on. There's two basic ways in which a campaign itself, we're going to put aside super PACs and political committees like the RNC, the Republican National Committee, they raise money. One is online, and that's with small dollar donors. And then one is kind of your more traditional way. Yeah, you can raise it online, or you have a fundraiser, someone strokes you a check. Now, those small dollar online donors, you have to be careful regardless of the candidate or the campaign or the fundraising enterprise. Sometimes there's a box that gets checked of having a recurring donation. And at some point in Trump world, a lot of people got that box auto-checked and wound up contributing a lot more money over time than they thought they would. 5 here, 5 there, on and on and on. Next thing you know that they've contributed a whole bunch of money. So CNBC reported that was still happening with Trump's Save America PAC.
Okay, so we'll talk about the hows and whys and all that, but let's talk about why he's actually making these phone calls now and why they need this money. Because, I mean, it really feels like it's tied directly to, hey, I owe the courts a lot of money, potentially. I'm looking at several 9-figure size judgments. Like, why is he raising the money now that he had kind of skipped doing before that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of reasons. The bottom line is Donald Trump has a bunch of legal problems. He's had civil fines, as much as $540 million slapped against him. He's had legal bills to pay for them and his criminal cases, about $50 million over the past 13 months. And that keeps people from, A, contributing to you or to him. Sometimes they're contributing to opponents, in this case, Nikki Haley, before her, Ron DeSantis. And it makes it harder just to kind of self-fund if he decides to do that. That ability for Trump to say, okay, I can ultimately reach into my pocket and cover these expenses. Well, that avenue is somewhat closed out. You put all of these things together, and you add to the fact that Joe Biden is outraising Donald Trump. He's underspending Donald Trump, and President Biden has more money in his campaign bank than Donald Trump does. That's sort of a perfect storm for Trump to realize, like, yo, I got to do my job. I got to pick up the phone. I've got to raise the money. And he's raising money in, a variety of ways. There's the small dollar donors. He's doing these traditional fundraisers. He had a $6 million fundraiser. They raised that much at Mar-a-Lago on the day that he got slapped with that massive New York attorney general lawsuit, or the civil fine that was in mid-February. He also had a $6 million fundraiser in South Carolina. He's got another one coming up with Tulsi Gabbard, the former Hawaii congresswoman and 2020 presidential candidate, Democrat or former Democrat. In addition to that, he's beefing up his online fundraising staff to make sure they can just sort of wring more money out of donors. And he's raising money into a special, heretofore sort of unpublished account at the Republican National Committee called the Nominee Fund, which once he becomes the nominee, he can start to tap.
Right, but he can't yet, right, because he's not officially the nominee.
But Trump basically knows it's just a matter of time. The question is when does Nikki Haley finally give up the ghost? I mean, you do have to give Nikki Haley some credit. She's become a master of just losing. I think she's 0-5. She's going to lose Michigan. She'll be 0-6, and she keeps essentially declaring victory and moving on to the next contest. It's a source of annoyance for Trump, but it is what it is, and it's keeping him from being sort of the de facto nominee.
Well, there's something to be said for annoying Trump. There's a joy there.
It's working for her. It's working. I mean, she's raising money, right?
Well, is she in terms of the comparison here? I read somewhere that she was outraising him, but is that right across all channels? I mean, is that still the case?
That is true. We don't know with super PACs. We're in a period of time now where campaigns report monthly to the Federal Election Commission. Super PACs report usually on a 6-month basis. Okay. So we don't know the super PACs. Super PACs are technically independent. But what we do know is, in January, the last report for the month of January showed that she was outraising Trump and outspending Trump, albeit she had less money in the bank because early on she wasn't able to catch fire because DeSantis was sort of occupying all of that ground.
Yeah. All right. So he is raising money, at least in part, for court cases. What's the breakdown on what he can? If I'm Sonny Bunch. I'm sitting here at home. I get a text message telling me that it's desperate times in the Trump campaign. They're going to 6 times match me. If I send $100, and 12 times match me if I send more. All right. So what percentage of what I send to the Trump campaign, because I'm so desperate to help our dear leader, can he use for court cases or just for elections? How does that actually break down?
Tricky question is actually when you say the Trump campaign, it's basically zero.
Okay.
So what Trump does is he's got 2 committees. He's got his campaign committee and he's got his leadership PAC called Save America. And then over both of them is called a joint fundraising committee. So all the money that's raised online goes to that joint fundraising committee, and that sends 90 cents of every dollar raised to the campaign and 10 cents to the leadership PAC, which is then able to finance the lawsuits.
Gotcha.
So bottom line, for every dollar raised online, 90 cents goes to Donald Trump's campaign, and 10 cents, at least as of now, goes to his legal bills or his ability to pay the legal bills.
What do your sources say is the impact of this? Do people understand how this works? I mean, do folks in Republican world think that the court cases are hurting him because people are like, well, I don't want to send money to cover Donald Trump's legal fees, or helping him because it's like, well, he's being oppressed by these Dem lib states?
That's a good question. I think it's one of those things that depends on who you ask. Your small dollar donors, by and large, are those who are like able to or susceptible to respond to that call, saying like the Democrats are out for election interference to destroy Donald Trump through lawfare. Can you pitch in $5 now? They're more likely to respond to that. Whereas your bigger institutional donor, I don't really want to do this, right? The sort of your more sort of financial elite and the like. But I mean, what is beyond dispute is this. The criminal cases against Donald Trump, and to a degree the civil cases, helped him in the primary and were like just rocket fuel that propelled him and that sort of solidified his base behind him. I understand I'm mixing metaphors. Rocket fuel doesn't solidify things, but sure. Pardon me. And then on top of that, it has given his campaign and his candidacy a sense of purpose. But that's in the primary. We really have these sort of big unanswered questions about what happens in a general election. Yeah, there's polling out there that says if Donald Trump is convicted of a felony, will people be less likely to vote for him? And the answer to that is more likely than not, yes. However, that hasn't really been worked out in the context of a campaign. So I would submit we still don't really know. And what we do probably know is that the first legal case against Donald Trump is going to be the Alvin Bragg case regarding the Stormy Daniels hush money payouts. And even Democrats and a lot of legal experts think that Alvin Bragg, the New York prosecutor, it might be on thin ice in overreaching here. That is, for Donald Trump's campaign, if he's going to be brought up on criminal charges first, he wants the Alvin Bragg case first, and it looks like he might get it.
Yeah. All right. So let's shift focus slightly to the RNC DNC matchup, because this is also interesting. Again, a thing I hear from folks is, I'm not donating to the RNC. I don't want that to turn into a slush fund for Donald Trump's legal problems, you know. But also, I mean, frankly, you have the candidate himself out there saying, give me the money. The RNC is incompetent. What are they doing? You know, how has this hurt the RNC fundraising? You know, what's the comparison between RNC and DNC right now?
Yeah, I should probably draw up the money so I don't screw it up. But bottom line is the DNC is outraising the RNC. And that's partly just a function of the fact that there's an incumbent president who's a Democrat in office, and that's a sort of a unified, seamless operation. And that's something that you just expect to see. What you don't really expect to see is the RNC doing as badly as it is. Mm-hmm. And it has been hamstrung in its fundraising and its finances. There are some people who don't want to give to the RNC because they just don't want to eventually give to Donald Trump. That might change once it becomes a clear general election and we wind up in shirts and skins. You know, your Republican donors are going to wind up giving anyway. On the other hand, Ronna McDaniel, who is now on her way out, the RNC chairwoman, sort of forced out by Trump. The last final straw was the bad fundraising that she had done. And the combination of those factors has just brought a great amount of instability at the RNC. And on March 8th, by the way, McDaniel plans to officially step down. Trump's choice, a guy named Michael Whatley from North Carolina, is more than likely going to be voted in by the RNC members to be the chair. And then Laura Trump, Donald Trump's daughter-in-law, is going to be co-chair. Now, one related aside or related matter that relates to what you had just asked about with the RNC funding legal bills, Laura Trump sort of caused a bit of a problem for the Trump campaign by saying just last week, look, every penny needs to go to Donald Trump. Newsflash, not every penny that goes to the RNC can actually be used explicitly for the presidential candidate. And when asked, do Republican donors want to finance his lawsuits and his legal defense, she said yes. Now, she's accurate in that regard, but what she didn't do was stay on the campaign message, which is the RNC will not pay for legal bills.
Right.
Now, the Trump campaign co-campaign manager, Chris LaCivita, was asked this by reporters, like, hey, is the RNC, once you guys take it over, going to pay legal bills? He said no. Reporters then, being reporters, basically asked him the same question again. Are you sure that the legal bills, you know, are going to pay for Donald Trump, or better said, RNC donors are going to pay for the legal bills? And then in addition to saying no, he said fucking no. So we have it pretty clearly, but, you know, we'll see what we see.
Well, and also you have Henry Barber of Mississippi, who is a Haley backer, wants it written into, you know, the RNC rules and into the, you know, he's floating a draft resolution basically saying RNC is not going to pay for any of these legal bills. We're going to spend money on the elections in 2024. Is that going to go anywhere?
It probably won't go anywhere. I mean, Barber himself admits that he probably can't get the requisite number of supporters to have it officially introduced, and everyone basically agrees that this is Donald Trump's party and the likelihood of having that approved is slim. However, Trump might actually nod for it to be so, to put donors at ease. I mean, in the end, Donald Trump is still able to raise the money for his legal defense bills. Once he becomes clearly the nominee and the only Republican horse to ride in town, I would not be surprised to see some very large donors get some money together and put it in a special fund, put it in Save America or who knows what, just to pay for his legal defense and put it off the table. And that way it would create the space for donors to give to the RNC without having to worry that this is going to go for more criminal defense in 1, 2, 3, 4 cases.
Yeah. Well, Mark, is there anything else folks should know about the current state of the fundraising, what the Trump campaign is up to?
I think it's important to remember this. You know, what did I miss in the story? Well, two things. One, Donald Trump has been hit with all of these big fines, but there were some recent Securities and Exchange Commission action which made his Truth social media platform possibly very valuable, and that could help defray a lot of his personal or business fines. The second thing is this, is while Donald Trump is behind now in fundraising compared to Joe Biden, he's doing all the things he needs to do. And people around Trump are not freaked out because he's doing the things that he needs to do. And they figure he's going to have raised by, November about $1 billion to $900 million. And $1 billion, you're talking real money. And that's essentially what a presidential campaign costs.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Well, yeah, and the last thing is, remember this. A lot of money that's spent in campaigns is burned on television and in ads. What's really unique about having a former president and a current president running against each other is both of them are 100% defined. And so the amount of TV ads that are actually going to move the electorate and persuade people is very low. Now, they are going to have to do some money in advertising, but I think the role of big money in advertising is going to be less in this election than we've seen in recent presidential contests.
Yeah. Well, what are they going to spend the money on then? Where does that go to? Ground. Door knocking?
Ground. And it's especially important for the Republicans. Michigan, the Republican Party in Michigan is a clown show. And I say that with respect to actual clown shows that would be offended. Arizona's Republican Party, same thing. Georgia's Republican Party is dysfunctional, but not quite at clown show levels. Now, there's only so much that ground game matters, but it matters. So I think you're going to see a lot of money spent there. This is one thing that Democrats also have an advantage in. They have better organization structurally, both the national party, the state party levels in these battleground states. They also have a better constellation of these smaller get out the vote operations that target different slivers of the electorate. That's an important thing to watch.
Yeah. All right, Marc, thanks for being on. It's always a pleasure to get you on the show here.
Thanks. I want to do it again.